Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out 2-sentence horror. Story 1. I made my husband promise me he'd return home from the war no matter what happened. As I watched him shamble towards me, my arm throbbing, I couldn't help but smile knowing we were finally together again. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 2. There's only one way I can save you from the sacrifice of the Virginies, I told to my sister. Story 3. When I was a kid, a law was implemented where you now had to pay a subscription fee to breathe oxygen. Coming from a family 5, it didn't take long for me to become an only child. Story 4. I told my psychiatrist Natalie that I no longer feel obsessed about anybody. Natalie understood because Natalie is very clever and Natalie knows that I feel the urge to kill only when I'm fixated about someone, so Natalie signed my discharge form. Natalie is very clever. Story 5. For my final wish I detailed all my physical flaws and how I wanted them fixed, accounting for every contingency I could think of. The genie snapped his fingers and suddenly I felt a blinding agony as my bones started snapping and growing. Teeth twisting excruciatingly straight, I collapsed to the ground and violently eject liquefied fat and feces from both holes. Story 6. As I was being given the medication prescribed by my doctor, I had only one thought. The promise that restraints weren't used as punishment in the psych ward was a lie and no one will ever believe me. Story 7. Mommy, look, the little girl in the photo on the milk carton has your name. Why? Upon hearing that question, my husband gave me a cold stare from across the room. Story 8. Although I was tired, I got up from the couch to play doctor with the twins I was babysitting. Then I found out their definition of the game as I lay duct taped to the bed while one of the twins stepped into my view with a hammer. Story 9. As I approached, the TSA scanner suddenly wouldn't stop beeping. They tell me it was the bones of a ghost that follows me. Story 10. With her face close to mine, I caressed her grey hair with my wrinkled hands and said with my dying breath, I will always love you. I never did is what echoes in blackness for eternity. Story 11. Every night he crashes his black SUV into a red Ford. As swiftly as the lethal impact, he found himself back at the beginning of those winding streets, hands behind the wheel, with the night resetting in an inescapable loop. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 12. I gently tug one out as I kiss the one I love. I then make sure to quietly close the window so she doesn't wake up. Story 13. After my latest failed attempt, I awoke in the hospital to the smiling faces of my family and the doctor saying I was lucky to be alive. As the doctor left the room, all smiles faded and my mother said, in her typical dismissive tone, I guess you can't even die, right? Story 14. The first thing I looked forward to when moving from my apartment building was the silence from the kids upstairs stomping. But alas, I could once again hear the tiny feet non-stop galloping from above, forcing me to mourn sleep and somehow managing to ignore that I'm renting a house. Story 15. At the count of 3, my brother and I held our breath and dove underwater to see who can hold it the longest. When I was sure that I had won, my head hit something cold and hard upon going back upward, and my hands couldn't find an opening. Story 16. After suffering from prolonged stress and work depression, the woman finally killed herself. In heaven everyone has to work, and it's good that you have years of experience as a personal assistant because we require more of them, said the angel. Story 17. We threw his daughter into the volcano but the gods rejected our sacrifice. I don't understand, the farmer said she had never seen a boy her whole life. Story 18. They say be careful what you wish for. But, what if I'm already dead? Story 19. The shrieks and screeches and wails prevailed throughout the night, invading my brain, nearly driving me insane. This nightmarish dream was not the worst, for I was cursed to learn with sorrow, that it's my turn to scream tomorrow. Story 20. My wife came and told me to get rid of the creepy clown statue in the basement. I don't have a wife. Story 21. I sat down with my son in front of the TV hoping to show him some things from my childhood. Don't hug me, I'm scared, I mumbled before pressing play. Story 22. The doctors said something was attached to my mole before they snipped it off. The mole got removed, but the something retracted back under my skin in a rapid series of prehensile squirms. Story 23. My heart leapt into my mouth as I recognized my son was amongst the group slowly shuffling into the room. Swallowing hard, I cleared my throat and turned, "Ma'am, do any of these men resemble your attacker?" Story 24. They say that fungus cultivates us as much as we cultivate them. The rot is far more ancient than we are, and we all return to it eventually. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 25. When my daughter told me about her imaginary friend Tommy, I told her that I used to have a friend named Tommy too. I know, Daddy, but he's mad that you forgot about him, and now he's back for you. Story 26. During my morning walk, a blue jay sitting on a nearby tree started talking to me, and that was when I woke up from my coma and found myself in a hospital bed. After a few days, while I was leaving the hospital with my wife, I heard someone calling me, and then I noticed a blue jay sitting on a nearby tree. Story 27. Today Max brought his favorite ball to the corner, dropping it gently before backing away with a soft whine. He's been staring intently at that same empty corner of the living room every day since we moved in. Story 28. I once wished for eternal clarity of mind. I would never get used to the feeling of every single one of my atoms getting scattered across the universe. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 29. I was devastated when the love of my life died only a week after our marriage. But what's even more devastating, however, is having to lay here next to him while I slowly suffocate. Story 30. It gets easier, right? But my sponsor didn't say anything, just handed me my 200-year chip. Story 31. My blood began to boil with rage as the judge exclaimed not guilty, thus declaring my freedom. With no home or resources to provide for myself, I'll have to be even more reckless to guarantee my next victim lands me a retirement with 3 meals and adequate shelter. Story 32. When it was announced that there were only a few spots in heaven left, I was absolutely terrified. When I saw my child playing in the other room, I realized that this would be the most difficult decision I would ever have to make in my life. Story 33. The scariest part about jumping off a roof isn't the impact. It's on the way down when your life literally flashes before your eyes and you have to relive every single traumatic moment that brought you to that point. Story 34. So cool that we finally got a piranha. I shivered as I knew the little girl would place it in the same fish tank that I was living in. Story 35. There's but one way out. He pressed his body against the cold wall of the sea cave, dragging a flayed leg behind him. From the cavern's mouth came a carcinaceous clicking. Story 36. I still don't have a kettle for my new apartment, but I realized I can just heat a cup of water in the microwave. I put it in for 10 minutes and it still didn't boil. Let's have a gulp and see if it's at least warm. Story 37. In a sudden uproar, parents began to kill their own children, but luckily both my parents had been long dead. I felt comfortable watching as the chaos unfolded around me until my uncle, eyes full of madness, bolted at me with a steel knife. Story 38. DEC23. My dad installed a bidet in my new apartment's bathroom because and loved it so much he used it on all his now frequent visits. I had to do a double take when I went to clean it, peeled off a piece of white tape, and found a glowing red light. Story 39. Now decide, your son or your daughter. I never said I would spare the one you chose. Story 40. The rat torture method is undeniably inhumane, resulting in the victim being eaten alive by rats trapped in a bucket against the person's stomach. But each bite took ounces and pounds away, and so I stayed lying down and let them gnaw away until I was beautiful again. Story 41. I was suspecting that my monthly was coming up, so I made sure to take an ibuprofen to tone down any pain. If anything, though, I'm just worried that people will find out about the truth about the dog attacking the neighborhood those nights. Story 42. When I suffered from body dysmorphia, I used to push on my stomach to make it flat and have struggled to kick the habit. It wasn't until blood began to pool on the floor beneath me that I came back to reality and realized how hardly I was pushing on my pregnant belly. Story 43. This feels unusually long, I think to myself as I'm riding rapidly down the enclosed water slide. And as the nausea sets in, I realize I should probably be underground by now, and that breaking into the waterpark at night was a terrible idea. Story 44. I constantly worry about leaving my front door unlocked when I'm going to bed, so I always check. The one damn day I forget to check. Story 45. I laughed at the wizard after he told me to be scared of his 6-foot-tall boyfriend. But he didn't precise how long he is. Story 46. Daddy told me it was dangerous for me to go out since I was too young to defend myself against the zombies. He never said the zombies had blue suits and looked like humans. Story 47. I was going through hallways when a door led me to a recursive infinity of the same room. I've been rationing food and water, walking non-stop to at least find some exit. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 48. The woman screamed out as I stabbed her in the woods, hoping the nearby residents would hear her. I grinned underneath my mask. Nobody would be coming. They learned to ignore the bobcats' mating calls. Story 49. Breathing heavily in the dark of my echoing confines, I lit a match by feel desperate to escape before they returned for me. A moment too late, I found out what the stale, sulfurous smell in the air was. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. Story 50. My grandma used to be so sweet and friendly before going to live in her nursing home. Now, her face shows the same flat smile in all the pictures she sends me. Story 51. I've always been self-confident and never missed shooting myself a smile in the mirror every morning. Ever since my reflection stopped smiling back, I haven't looked in a mirror for months. Be the first to comment. Nobody's responded to this post yet. Add your thoughts and get the conversation going. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.